Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Uncanny X-Men number 187, cover dated November 1984. The cover here by John Romita Jr. and Dan Green. Not my favourite cover from John Romita Jr.'s original run on Uncanny X-Men. Obviously features Storm here being attacked in some way by a Dire Wraith here looming over her, and we've got way in the background Rogue in a new costume and Colossus in another new costume as well. So kind of a strange cover. If there are any fans of it, let me know in the comments to the video. But let's open this one up to the splash page, and this is a pretty cool splash page of Storm exiting Eagle Plaza after the breakup with Forge at the end of the previous issue. Where she considers Forge to be a liar. So the title of the story here is Wraith Kill, and the creative team is Chris Claremont writer, John Romita Jr. and Dan Green credited as artists. What that means is John Romita Jr. is providing breakdowns and Dan Green finishes in ink. Tom Orzechowski, letterer, Glynis Wine, colorist. So the narrative captions here: she's soaked to the skin before she takes a dozen steps, but she doesn't care. Aurora only wants to be as far as possible, as fast as possible from Eagle Plaza and the man who lives atop this gleaming 100-story skyscraper, Forge. A man she might have loved, the man who destroyed her, because she's learned that he's responsible for the loss of her mutant powers over the weather. And that's made plain here by the fact that Storm usually would be able to walk in the rain and not be soaked, but she's getting soaked here because she's got zero power over the weather. One of John Romita Jr.'s great talents is drawing rain, and he does it very well in this issue, in these panels, as well as on the splash page. What happens while she's walking away from the plaza is there is a flash of sorceress energy in the lobby of the plaza, and this Dire Wraith emerges to test the security of Forge's building, and it's blasted away by that security system. And Storm hears the alarm sounding and sees some people outside the front of the building, and one of them says, "Inspector Mathis, FBI." These figures are in silhouette, deep silhouette. The security man lets them in, but it turns out that the woman is possessed by a Dire Wraith, or actually the way the Dire Wraiths work, we're going to see it here. It's quite disgusting, and the opening of this story is a lot like a horror movie, and then it becomes an action movie about midway through, where this Dire Wraith attacks the security guard, sticks a barbed tongue to the core of Joe Huntley's brain. A couple of things there. It's disgusting, number one, what this Dire Wraith does, reminiscent in some ways of the Xenomorph from the Alien movie franchise. But also Claremont giving the security guard a name as well. And Claremont very good at humanizing background characters who only appear for a few panels. He gives them a backstory and makes the reader care about them, individuates them. So he's a victim of this Dire Wraith, who then takes on his memories, his identity, and his very physical form. So he goes back to the security booth now. This Dire Wraith calls Forge, or rather Forge is calling him, and tells him that it was a false alarm, that the storm's triggering glitches throughout the system. But meanwhile, he deactivates the defensive systems in the building below Forge's residence, so that the Dire Wraiths can go after Forge, because they've determined that he is someone who can do them severe damage, because he's working on a prototype of Rom the Space Knight's blaster that kills Dire Wraiths. So that's why they're going after him. So then we're out with Storm in the storm. And again, like I said earlier, John Romita Jr., one of his great talents is driving rain. And you can see it here, like the rain hitting the pavement and splashing on the ground. Really good stuff. And she is attacked from behind by a monstrous Dire Wraith. And will it get the better of her? No. So she fights back and kicks it in the face, or whatever is the closest thing it has for a face. And she thinks, this horror can be hurt. It dropped me. From what it said, its power must be akin to Rogue's, only it slays its victims. And then she runs back towards Eagle Plaza. This is a classic John Romita Jr. running pose. Grabs an empty waste paper bin and flings it through the windows of the entrance to the building. And this is a great shot here of the glass shattering in those jagged concentric circles. That's really well done by Romita Jr. And so the Dire Wraith follows her into the lobby with its checkerboard floor, and she blasts away. She grabs a handgun, the discarded handgun from the body of the security guard, and blasts away at the Dire Wraith, but she runs out of bullets. And the Dire Wraith says, "Your weapon is empty, and though I'm sorely wounded, your life essence will restore." And then, boom, shot the face off it. So this is lots of gore here falling down on Storm. And who's outside the cracked window except for Naze in silhouette? Pretty cool with his shotgun there and the car behind him. And he comes up to Storm and says, "Glad to be of help. What was that critter?" Anyway, she says, "A Dire Wraith. And you're Storm." So introduction's over. Storm infers that they must be after Forge. And then Naze reveals why he's there. He had a prophetic dream. He said, "I'm a shaman. Last night I saw the eagle fighting for his life atop his eyrie, struck down by those who seemed to be trusted friends and yet were not." So Storm says the wraiths are shape stealers. Okay, and Naze continues, "Forge is the last best hope of my people and perhaps yours. He must be saved." And that goes all the way back to issue 184 and Naz's introduction in the book, where he had had a fight with Forge about Forge fulfilling his potential as a shaman for the Cheyenne people. So then Forge gets the call up in his eyrie from Storm, but it's too late. The Dire Wraiths have arrived and they enter the building in the form of these death wings. So these are interesting looking kind of pterodactyl type versions of the Dire Wraiths that can fly and apparently spit out flaming acid. So Storm realizes it's too late. Naze cocks his shotgun there, and they're getting ready to head up and help Forge. And then we get this interesting revelation that Storm knows how to use a handgun. So she's reloading the revolver here, and we get this backstory of Wolverine insisting that he train her in the use of a handgun, because you never know, he says, when that knowledge will come in handy. A gun's the last thing anyone would expect from you. Someday that might give you the edge you need to survive, and it does now that Storm has lost her elemental powers. So they have a little back and forth, Naze and Storm, about how she knows him, and the fact that she doesn't like him. She won't explain why, but she thinks to herself here, his fate is mine alone to decide in terms of saving him. She doesn't want those Dire Wraiths to kill him. So then we've got this great action sequence coming up for the rest of the book, with Storm in the elevator shaft, and she's attacked by one of these hellhounds that the Dire Wraiths use, and it phases through her and injures her arm. But then the hellhound is blasted by Naze's shotgun. And here we go. This is a great sequence by John Romita Jr., where the cable on one of the elevators is torn by the magics of one of this Dire Wraith, and then the cable wraps around her leg, and she finds herself bound and yanked into the air as Naze's blasting away at the Dire Wraith. And then we get this well thought out sequence from Claremont, and we have it explained in Storm's thoughts. So attached to the elevator's counterweights, the cable is attached to the elevator's counterweights. They're falling, dragging me with them. Only seconds to act before I'm crushed against the top of the shaft. Right arm is useless. Must take the strain off the line. She drops the gun. I manage to snag hold. If I can untangle my legs, picking up speed, how close to the roof am I? Forget about that. I either have sufficient time or I do not. And then she's free. She grabs the cable unlooses the binding from her legs, and she's overjoyed at her success, but also reminded of Yukio. I cannot help laughing, she thinks. I feel so alive. This is the same mad, wondrous joy my friend Yukio feels, to risk all against seemingly impossible odds and win. And that began like her association with Yukio in Japan, in Tokyo in Japan, back in issue 173 and 174, began Storm's character-rising transformation, and Claremont developing the character, making her tougher and more resourceful. And now she has to be, because she's lost her powers. So she lets go of the cable. The momentum, she figures, will carry her on further before she begins to fall, and she catches a girder and pulls herself up to safety. What a ride. It's kind of like something out of years later, the Die Hard movies. She's doing a bit of a Bruce Willis here in advance of Bruce Willis playing John McClane. And then she even thinks practically about how she should have disposed of these shoes in the lobby. The heels are sure to break her ankles. So Claremont really thinking things out here, like why is she wearing the high heels? Well, Romita Jr. wants to draw them, but Claremont working in some thoughts from Storm regarding it as well. Meanwhile, Naze figures that since he didn't hear a body fall, Aurora must have cut herself loose. Good for her. And then he's thinking about her, that she's a warrior born, a match I'd wager for the eagle himself. He means Forge. What did that fool do to make her his enemy? He even thinks to himself, to be 20 years younger, I'd not let a prize like Aurora slip through my fingers. I'd give my foster son a run for her heart. So we learned that Naze was not only Forge's mentor as a shaman, but also his foster father. So that's interesting. And a little bit of an Oedipal struggle there, in terms of Naze thinking that like he'd fancy his chances if he was a little younger with Storm. And we'll see that play out a little bit in the prologue issues to Fall of the Mutants. So anyway, he blasts away in the dark here and reckons that he has taken out a Dire Wraith, and lets rip a shout of victory. And then we pick up with Storm again. She opens doors to the rooftop of the building, and there's a blizzard outside. And she thinks, impossible, we're too far south. A tempest such as this should not even occur in midwinter. And then she's attacked by the sorceries of one of the Dire Wraiths that's on the roof, together with a Hellhound. Now, this blizzard on the roof that almost kills Storm, we'll get an explanation for what caused it in the next issue. But it's to do with events in Thor, issues 348 and 49 of Thor, which concern the opening of the Casket of Winters. And so we see that effect showing up all the way down in Dallas, Texas here. So a nice bit of kind of in-universe continuity that Claremont's working into this story, and giving Storm an extra challenge on the rooftop. So it's so freezing her hands when she uses the metal rod to beat the Hellhound. Her hands nearly froze to the metal. And then she's attacked by the Hellhound that phases into her and wounds her. And this is interesting. She falls backwards off the top of the roof of that section of Eagle Plaza. She stumbles into space, automatically spreading her arms wide to catch the wind, a part of her shrieking in vain that her powers are gone, that she cannot fly, only to be scooped up by a freak gust and cast back onto the roof. So could it be a freak gust, or could there be an unconscious use of her powers? Claremont would play around with the idea that although Aurora has lost her powers consciously, she may have some unconscious control over them, which is interesting. So she's on the rooftop, freezing to death. The Dire Wraith comes up right behind her. She makes it back into the building and shuts the doors and bolts them behind her. And the Dire Wraith doesn't rip the doors off the hinges, which is what she was expecting. There's merely a frantic pounding that quickly fades away. and she thinks to herself here, I've killed without hesitation or mercy. Wolverine would be proud. She's being ironic. Is this an ending? The farewell of the storm that was, or my new beginning? And then something unexpected happens here. There is a soul meld. Without warning, Ororo's mind is crushed under an avalanche of thoughts, not her own. She's no longer Ororo or even an individual, but an amalgam of herself, Forge, Naze, Wraith, and one other that is neither human nor alien, both alive and dead, possessing the divinity of a god and the cruel humour of the devil. And that's that figure here in silhouette. Who could it be? Well, that will be revealed in the run-up to Fall of the Mutants, because it is the adversary. So here's Romita Jr.'s interesting visualization of what Claremont's narrative caption talks about here. And it continues and says she feels a delicious terror at the mysterious other, as this mysterious other throws open the gates of chaos within her, then cries out as she realizes that her soul is gone. Yet surprisingly, she doesn't really miss it, for another's has taken its place. That's interesting. And Forge also part of this meld, and he is reeling from the experience here, and that leaves him vulnerable to attack by these dire wraiths that are coming up on him, but his automated security systems take care of them. They blast them away, which is cool. And it reminds me a little bit of those robot sentries in the Aliens movie, but that's in the future. So Claremont's getting there ahead of Jim Cameron. And then, great sequence here of the raids using their spells, and these dark wings spraying the penthouse with blasts of acid flame. Very cool. So, Storm finds Forge, and he says, not a move or I'll burn you where I stand, but she's not a Dire Wraith in disguise. So she says, she's practical, all practicality, where are the lights? First thing the Wraiths did was zap the generators. Then he says to her, I'm glad to see you. But she doesn't respond in kind. She just continues with the practicalities. What just happened, Forge? Some entity bound us in rapport, tried to drive us insane. I think simply for the fun of it. And he says to her, your guess is as good as mine, but she's really skeptical of him. She's lost trust in him entirely. I doubt that. How naturally you lie, she says. I should be used to that by now. But Forge says, think what you like, Ororo, your privilege, but if you're not here to help, find a place to hide. So she says no. She promised Naze she'd save him, and her word is her bond, and take cover. This is great. Like, she gets in front of him and blasts away with the gun he gives her at the attacking Dire Wraiths. So here they come. They're in trouble. One of the raids casts a spell to disguise itself as Storm and make her appear to be a Dire Wraith, and Forge is faced with a choice as to which of them he might shoot, but he makes the right choice. He called on a part of himself he's denied for 10 years. Abilities he swore never to use again. That's his shamanistic magics. But he says here, but I figured you were worth it. She doesn't respond to that. So then Naze makes his appearance, and so too do the X-Men, at least Colossus and Rogue, in their new costumes. And so Ford says, nice entrance, couldn't you have used the door? And Rogue responds humorously, wanted to surprise you all. So Ororo's delighted to see Colossus, whom she calls her little brother, Paws and Rogue, because of course, you know, Rogue is in part responsible for Ororo losing her powers. Then they race up to the penthouse, where they find masses and masses of Dire Wraiths and Darkwings and Hellhounds as well. So Rogue and Colossus, two of the strongest X-Men, go into attack the Dire Wraiths, and Forge here thinks, my spirit sight shows me the truth. Most of that is illusion, By tricking the X-Men into fighting things that aren't there, the real aliens will be able to catch them unawares. It's been too long since I used my own mystical abilities. They're too undependable. Because he's a man of science rather than magic, or that's what he wants to be. I don't dare risk it. I'll have to find some other way to combat their spells. So what does he come up with? Well, first of all, we have a little scene shift to Forge's Eyrie, the Eagle's Nest, Naze calls it. His Sanctum Sanctorum, his Holy of Holies, the seat and nexus of his might. Most impressive. And Naze says his power is almost beyond comprehension. He's a fool to deny it. And then he does something himself here. But what is that? And is this Naze indeed? Well, we'll have to find all that out in the next issue, which concludes the story. So meanwhile, back in the penthouse, we have Colossus being attacked by the Dire Wraith that's trying to take him over. But Colossus boots the Dire Wraith to the point that its tongue is pulled out of its head. It's pretty disgusting, but cool. And then we're on our last couple of pages. And something interesting here is I don't think these pages were inked by Dan Green. Or if they were inked by him, they were inked in a hurry. Because these pages and panels really have the look of breakdowns. That he didn't have enough time to work on these. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if this is John Romita Jr. inking himself on these last couple of pages to speed things up. Because in this issue we don't have a letters page, so we've got 23 pages of story and art, a couple of pages more than might be usual. So the X-Men do their best against the Dire Wraiths, and then suddenly from the heart of a light, there emerges two gleaming figures clad in shining armor. The Dire Wraiths recognize them, Rom and his paramour Starshine. So faced with their arch enemies, the Wraiths dispel their lesser enchantments to focus all their energies on this new threat, which is precisely what Forge hoped they'd do. And so the Dire Wraiths are dealt with by Forge's defense systems. And he explains, Wraiths have their illusions, I have mine. They were holograms. So they mop up the Wraiths, but then there's a new threat coming behind them. Has anyone seen Naze? Asks Storm. Unnoticed, the fabric of reality tears wide, and the battle is suddenly unexpectedly rejoined. Only this time it may be over before it's truly begun. And who are these freaky looking shadow beings, demons that have attacked the X-Men and Forge? Well, we'll have to check out the answer to that in the next issue that wraps up this storyline. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Uncanny X-Men 187. If you did, please like the video on YouTube, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.